Week 3 Miami Dolphins fans. Today's video is the first Dolphins Broncos Week 3 preview for our undefeated 2-0 atop the AFC East Miami Dolphins. The home opener on Sunday against the 0-2 Broncos. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on, but we're going to talk top news, some injury updates, a couple of the top matchups that I've got in this Dolphins-Broncos game. But before I get into anything, I do want to hear from you because once again, my final preview prediction video, I'm going to be taking a viewer question. So any question that you'd like me to consider in that video, go ahead, drop it in the comments. Thanks to everyone that's been doing it so far. Once again, I'll try to get to as many as possible. Now, we talked about the Broncos being 0-2 and the Dolphins being obviously 2-0. So some people are saying, no, it's a trap game. It's trap week. Dolphins started with Chargers, who a lot of people saw as a playoff team. And then Sunday night at a division rival, never going to be easy, despite them being 0-2 as well, the Patriots. And you got the Broncos, and then next week you're at Buffalo. So this is kind of that classic trap game, trap feel. I'm of the belief that, yeah, I understand that. This is more of a revenge week than trap week. And let me explain that, because I feel fairly safe in saying that the Dolphins aren't going to take this one lightly, especially with it being the home opener. So I'm labeling it more so revenge week because an array of reasons. Mike McDaniel, let's go through the list. You've probably heard some of these, but maybe I have a spin that you haven't heard yet. Mike McDaniel. Well, let's look at the coach on the other side of the field. That's Sean Payton, who Stephen Ross was sort of flirting with when the whole idea of, you know what, Sean Payton can be the head coach and Tom Brady can be the quarterback. You don't think Mike McDaniel's got that in his mind a little bit, especially with how good he's been his year plus so far of being with the Miami Dolphins? That's going to be on his mind. That's going to be motivation. Now look at the defensive coordinator. Vic Fangio, obviously previous head coach of the Denver Broncos for 3 seasons. And yeah, it didn't go well. 19 of 30, you could say that the firing maybe was justifiable. You could say he's a better defensive coordinator than he proved to be a head coach. But anytime that you get fired, if you get let go from that position, you're not going to take that lightly. You're going to want to make a proof point if you get the opportunity to take it back to that team. So that's where Fangio's at. Now let's look at the offensive line coach, because when the Dolphins brought in Butch Barry, a lot of fans, a lot of people in the media were saying, what are we doing? Do you realize when the Broncos let this guy go during the season last year, that Broncos players, specifically offensive linemen, were saying, thank God, that guy has been a cancer. We got him away from here. We're a better team without him. They can say whatever they want to say, but you know what I've got to say right now? The Dolphins offensive line, without Terron Armstead, with Isaiah Wynn just getting plugged in at left guard despite not being the guy the team expected there, and Austin Jackson really showing out so far at right tackle, the Dolphins have allowed 1 sack through 2 weeks. So far, Butch Barry has passed the sniff test. We're not 100% sold on him at this point in time. It's only been 2 games, but so far, so good. He's going to want to stick it to Denver as well. And last but not least, quarterback, Tua. Remember when Sean Payton, I think it was last year when he went on Colin Cowherd's show, and he made the prediction that Tua's going to get benched at some point during the season. And Tua's one of those guys that he always says he doesn't pay attention to the media. He's not listening to it. He's not letting it get to him. You can be pretty safe in assuming that he's heard this and he's going to want this to be revenge week as well. So like I said, I get the trap game. I get the trap week. It's also revenge week. The Dolphins aren't taking this lightly. Let's talk about some of the latest injuries as we do in this preview video, because on Wednesday, Jaylen Waddle stretched at practice. He is still in the protocol. He was not participating. That's a name that we continue to watch for on the injury report to see if he can clear. As of now, he has not cleared protocol. Terron Armstead, on the other hand, did participate, and he is expected to be ramped up in Thursday when they practice. So they let him go at it a bit today, ramp him up on Thursday, see how he feels on Friday. But like I said last week in one of the preview videos, don't be surprised if at some point they keep him active and they give him some reps, but maybe don't give him the full game. We obviously can't know if that's going to be the strategy going into the game for sure, but don't rule that out as a possibility, just to kind of get him in there and see how he does in an actual game setting as well. Moving through the injuries, Xavien Howard was not spotted at Wednesday's practice. Veteran day rest, nothing to worry about there. Salvon Ahmed, on the other hand, no practice Wednesday. Mike McDaniel said likely not practicing on Thursday. pretty safe in assuming he's likely going to miss Sunday's game, which, you know what, maybe means more Devon Achane. We'll see how that plays out as well. And then one last thing of good news, Jalen Phillips practiced today. He had mentioned that it sounds more likely that he will be ready to go as well. So for as good as Andrew Van Ginkel looked, I want Andrew Van Ginkel and Jalen Phillips to be available. So that's good news as well. I want to get into my matchups as well, but I promised a shout out in today's video because the viewer with the username of Zonka Would Run, great username, by the way, got to give him a shout out for correctly predicting the Dolphins Patriots score last week, Sunday Night Football. Definitely deserve a shout out for that. The 24-17 prediction. I tell you what, when I do the prediction video again, predict another Dolphins win. Let's go back to back on that one. All right, though, let's talk about that matchup to watch. I like to pick one offensively and defensively, and I want to see Pat Surtain and Tyreek Hill. Now, I'm not sure if he'll trail him the entire game, if they'll be able to stay on him the entire time. But Pat Surtain, one of those players that, like, despite not being a Dolphin, kind of one of those guys that you just respect and you know that he is a damn good ball player. Plus, his pops was a former Miami Dolphin, so it's hard not to like him. But in week one, PFF gave him a coverage grade of 82.5. I've got a few more stats than I normally give, but I found some of these stats very interesting in my matchups to watch this week. Week one, he allowed 2 catches for 16 yards. He forced 3 incompletions, allowed a passer rating of just 48.8. Through 2 weeks, he's allowed just 33 yards on 4 catches and just 7 targets. So you're not even targeting this guy. And when you are, you're not getting much production, just 33 yards on 7 targets. The issue with the Broncos secondary, some of the other guys, Tamari Mathis, not to really point someone out, but yes, to point someone out, through 2 weeks, has been targeted 17 times, has allowed 15 catches, 178 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So it's going to be interesting to see, does Mike McDaniel, does he go at a guy like Surtain, especially if Surtain is hanging right on Tyreek Hill the entire time? And the thing is about Tyreek Hill, despite how good a cornerback can be, Tyreek Hill is also one of the best at his position. So I don't think you just completely ignore a guy like Tyreek Hill if Pat Surtain is sticking with him wherever he goes on the field. He's still just a second-year guy. While he looks good, I'm still taking Tyreek Hill in basically any one-on-one matchup. So let's get that out there first and foremost. But do you target him? Do you go at a guy like Mathis? How does Mike McDaniel decide how he's going to try to carve up this defense? Because if Pat Surtain does kind of trail Tyreek wherever he is, well, then you know for sure that there's at least some man principles being exposed, being thrown out there defensively. And guess who's been pretty damn good against man coverage? Quarterback one, Tua Tagovailoa. And not to say he hasn't been good against zone as well, because he actually has been really good against both. But I think if you can go into a game, a team would say, we'd rather play zone. We'd rather be able to hang guys back and not let those speedy receivers get behind us. So you might see a little bit of man principles if you're taking a guy like Surtain and having him follow Tyreek Hill along in wherever he ends up lining up. So that leads me to believe it's going to be important for some of these other guys to step up, because we already talked about Jaylen Waddle being in the concussion protocol. He's far from a sure thing to be ready to go this week. So at that point in time, you're looking at a guy like Braxton Berrios and River Craycraft, and maybe even a guy, and Eric Ezukama, can't leave him out. He's actually gotten some reps and some snaps and meaningful snaps in games so far this year. But does a guy like Robbie Anderson end up getting elevated? Because he is speedy. He can take the top off of the defense. Not saying that he will, but keep an eye on that as well. But that matchup is going to be fun. That's going to be very interesting to watch. On the other side of the ball, if you look at the Dolphins defense, so obviously we're going to focus a little bit on that Broncos offense. Offensively, the way we really rely on Tyreek Hill and pepper him with targets, and he's a statistical monster, the Broncos don't have that. They've got 6 players that have carried the ball this year. They've got 11 players that have caught a pass this year. Their leading rusher is Javonte Williams, who has totaled less than 100 rushing yards in those first 2 games. And their leading receiver is rookie Marvin Mims, who has just 4 catches for 122 yards. And the crazy thing is 60 of those yards came on that. I think it was a long touchdown pass. So half of his yards came on one, and he's only gotten 4 catches all year. So it's not like Russell Wilson has consistently been targeting one guy. They haven't been running successfully with just one guy. So my matchup defensively is, how does this Dolphins pass rush go against that Broncos offensive line and Russell Wilson. Because in my opinion, you basically just can't let Russell Wilson be comfortable and sit in the pocket and pick and choose amongst an array of wide receivers. You got to get into his face. Russell Wilson has averaged about 240 passing yards per game, which puts him around the middle of the pack of NFL starters, but he's third in the NFL in 5 passing touchdowns. Now, this is where things get interesting. You've probably seen maybe some of these stats, but in case you haven't, take a peek at these because these are very interesting to me. The Miami Dolphins are third in quarterback pressure percentage, while 31st. 32 teams, they are 31st in blitz percentage. So what does that tell you? That means you are getting home and you are winning despite much, much, much fewer blitzes than one that we're used to from previous year, and 2, the NFL, just the league average. And now the funnier thing even about that is that we are tied for the 9th most sacks in the NFL with 7. Small sample size. We've only got 2 weeks, but we've got what we've got. For comparison's sake, we've got 7 sacks. NFL leader has 10. But of our 7 sacks, no Miami Dolphins player has more than 1. 8 different Dolphins have recorded at least a half a sack. Now, pay attention to these names. Andrew Van Ginkel, Zach Sealer, David Long, Bradley Chubb, Kader Kohu, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, and Justin Bethel. You're going to notice something there. It's that these sacks, they're not just coming from just edge rushers or defensive linemen. They're coming from a little bit everywhere. Defensive linemen were called. Edge rushers were called. Off-ball linebackers were called. Cornerbacks were called. Vic Fangio, Revenge Man, Revenge Week, has shown that he can generate a pass rush in a variety of ways that doesn't necessarily include a bunch of blitzing. Like I said, like we saw in a Josh Boyer-led defense last year. So look to see if that trend continues. That's my matchup on that side of the ball for this week. But like I said, Dolphins fans, running a little bit long today. I'm going to cut the video there. But any questions that you've got for that final preview prediction video, go ahead, drop them in the comments. Any of the matchups that you'll be watching, go ahead and drop those in the comments as well. I'll be back with at least one more preview video this week. I might potentially have a guest. I'm still trying to line that up for an additional preview video this week. Like I said, we'll see how that goes. But get those questions for the prediction video submitted. And until next time, Dolphins fans, fins up.